Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laron, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaron.com. Hello and welcome to episode 121. Today's episode is about AI and authors, because it's something I've been thinking about over the last week. And so I'm going to offer some thoughts as a follow-up to an episode that I did, probably almost 18 months ago. It was episode 69, How AI is Going to Replace Us. It was one of my more popular episodes. I think it was back in 2018. And so it was a good episode. I'll link to it in the show notes. This is in many ways a continuation of that and a update on some of my thoughts and some of the progress that I have made in learning and understanding AI for authors. But we'll get to that in due time. First off, let's talk about announcements. First things first, the advanced reading copies for my new book, my self-publishing questions answered book, will go out next week. So we have firmed up a release date. The book will be available on July 27th. So less than a month. It's going to be coming at you fast and furious. We just had to figure out some things to make sure we had a right release date that worked for both me and Ally. And so it's coming out July 27th. So the ARCs will go out next week. That will give people about 20 days or so, maybe a little bit less, to read the book. And then we'll just ask that you leave a review on launch day, which is on or after July 27th. And the review copies will be in ebook and in audio for those who may want to listen to the audiobook. And the audiobook is about 4.5 hours. So not very long by audiobook standards. So if you are not on the list for ARCs, you can join. It is not too late. You can sign up at authorlevelup.com/QA-advance. That's authorlevelup.com/QA-advance. And I will drop a link in the show notes. Now, because I mentioned that I'm jumping into audio, I really am jumping into audio and I'm throwing myself into the deep end. And so I wanted to let you guys know that I've started my next audiobook, and that is going to be Mental Models for Writers. So that is a very popular book in my Nonfiction for Writers series. It sells almost as many copies in ebook and in print as Be a Writing Machine. And so I think putting it in audio makes a lot of sense and it will help supercharge those sales. So I am about a third of the way through recording the book. I hope to be done sometime around middle of July. We'll kind of see. And depending on when ACX or Audible, when they approve the book, it should be available sometime around August or September. I've heard that ACX is taking a really, really long time to approve audiobooks right now. So even though I might be done with it this month, you may not see it until August or September for sale. So I'm working on that and I'm having some fun. And I think the next audiobook I work on after that will probably be the Indie Authors Encyclopedia. So it just makes sense to get all of my existing nonfiction into audio as a way to improve my sales. So that'll be kind of fun. Wins for the week. I was a guest on a podcast this week, and it was a podcast hosted by Howard Lovy, and he does the Inspirational Indie Voices podcast. It's a part of the Alliance of Independent Authors Network, and it's a great show. Howard, every week, every Sunday, he interviews an author whose voice needs to be heard in the community. And there's been a lot of great interviews on the show. And so I was kind of touched when he reached out to interview me, and we talked about a lot of things that I haven't talked about on podcasts before. We talked about my background, how I grew up. We got into my near-death experience a little bit. And so yeah, I don't have a link for you yet, but it will be out on Sunday. So if I can remember, I will drop a link in next week's show so you guys can go and listen to it if you dare. Now, lessons learned this week. I learned a lot of stuff this past week, a lot, and it's really kind of fun. You know, this kind of what this is all about. It's all about learning and growing, right? And so in writing, I had an author reach out to me and ask to do a video on how to write minor characters. And so I did some research and learned quite a bit about how mega bestsellers write minor characters. So I did a YouTube video on it, and I don't want to say I'm proud of the video, but I think it turned out really well in terms of the lessons and the kind of the golden nuggets that I pulled from a few mega bestsellers on how they write minor characters. So I'll drop that in the show notes, but that was a major thing that I learned from writing this week. In business lessons, I learned something that probably won't be terribly interesting to majority of you, but it's worth planting the seed so that you at least are aware that it exists. And that is Onyx. So if you've never heard of Onyx, Onyx has to do with metadata. So when you think of your book as metadata, you think about your title, your subtitle, your book description, your price, all that good stuff, right? Your keywords, your categories. Those are data points that help your book get discovered. And if you think about how we do it, that's great. But then if you think about how publishers do it, it becomes more of a challenge, because before I learned all this stuff, I thought about publishers, and I always thought that there was some poor soul at Simon & Schuster or Random House that every time an author released a book, they had to go log into all the dashboards and, upload the book and do all that stuff. That's actually not how publishers do it at all. In fact, how they do it is through an automated data flow. So they have, they've developed, or the industry has developed a standard. It's called Onyx, and it stands for Online Information Exchange. And what it is it is a metadata standard so that you feed your book into it, or you feed your book's data into it, and then with the click of a button, you can send your book and all of the relevant metadata to bookstores, to libraries, to suppliers, to retailers, Amazon, you name it, right? They do all of this through an automated system, right? And the interesting part about this is that I shouldn't say automated system, they just do it through an automated standard, right? So there's nothing stopping indie authors from using Onyx. In fact, there are software and programs you can buy to where you can actually prepare your book meeting the Onyx standard, so that if you wanted to send it to a place that accepts Onyx, you could do that. Now, people are probably thinking, why the hell would you want to do that? It doesn't make any sense. That seems awfully complicated. Well, there's software out there that will help you do this. It's really not that hard. And the reason I think it's important is because right now we have to manually upload all of our books to different dashboards, right? So if you publish a book, you got to go upload it to Amazon, you got to upload it to Kobo and Barnes & Noble and all these places, right? That's just how we have to do it right now. But there is one retailer that does allow you to bulk upload your books using an Onyx standard. And bonus points to anyone who knows what that retailer is, and you might just happen to be there right now. All right, I won't tease you anymore. It's Publish Drive. Publish Drive allows you to bulk upload your books. So for example, if I prepared all of my books into an Onyx file that had everything that Publish Drive needed to know about the book, right? Title, subtitle, price, all that stuff. And then I included my book files within that, I could send that to Publish Drive, and they could upload the Onyx file to their servers and then auto-upload all my books, right? And it could auto-upload them and publish them, or it could auto-upload them as a draft, and then I just have to go in and approve. That is really interesting. Really interesting. I bet most people listening didn't even know that existed. It's really interesting for the fact that if a new retailer comes along tomorrow that is some hot new place, if they allow Onyx uploads, well, then you can prepare all of that with software that only costs like $100, and then you can easily send that to the retailer. You can get all your books uploaded without having to go into a dashboard and do it. All right, see, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about in the future, because I know that the current landscape of retailers is eventually going to change. And so when I've got 50, 60 books, maybe more, I don't have time to sit down and upload everything. I just don't have time to do it. So anyway, if you're interested in looking at it, it's called Onyx. I took a great course on LinkedIn. I don't know that everybody has LinkedIn Learning, but there's a great course. It's like an hour long, and it basically goes through the standard and how it works and what makes it tick. So anyway, I've talked about that way too long. Now, my copyright lesson is something I learned about Creative Commons licenses. I was in the middle of editing my book, Your Self-Publishing Questions Answered, and there was a question that came up about Creative Commons licenses and what happens if let's say you use an image on your blog that somebody allows you to use under a Creative Commons license. Like they say that you can use it for commercial use and you don't have to give any attribution, right? And you use it on your blog. And then somehow you find out that that person has changed the Creative Commons license. So now they're no longer allowing people to use the image for commercial use without having to charge for it. All right. Well, what I found out about this was looking at the Creative Commons license, the creator cannot revoke Creative Commons licenses that is already given out. So if you have downloaded an image, they can't make you take it down because it no longer meets their requirements. So the lesson here, and this is something that I learned, is that if you use Creative Commons images, you want to keep very good records of what you download, when you download it, where you got it, and where you are using it. Because that way, if you do get some rogue creator that doesn't understand the terms of the license, because let's face it, most people don't read terms of service, right? Then you can fire back and say, no, I downloaded this on this date. Your license was this and this and this on this date. Go F off. So that's yet another reason, guys, why I don't like to use Creative Commons stuff, because there's just too many unknowns and too many variables. I just don't like Creative Commons. That's just my personal thing. I like what it stands for. I like the fact that it exists. Like, I'm not one of those people that doesn't like its existence. I just don't like to use it as a business owner because it's too volatile, right? And then there's also no way to verify that the person that's giving the content away actually owns it. That's another problem. But anyway, so just so you know, Creative Commons licenses cannot be revoked down the road. So, all right, so I got not one, not two, but 3 ideas of the week. This is some weeks where I have a lot of ideas, and I struggle with them because it's like, wow, I can't do them, but it's a really interesting idea, and so I spend time thinking about it. So I had 3 different ideas this week that could be very, very interesting. All right. The first idea is giving your book away for free on torrent sites. Now, I've heard other people mention this. It's not like an original idea. But what would happen if you did that? I mean, there are torrent sites out there where you can upload your book and people can download them. If you're not familiar with torrent sites, they're basically download sites where you can download movies and games and music and all these other stuff that's probably illegal. But you can do it. And there's also some shady and some seedy underbelly activity that goes on these sites as well, with porn and things like that. But wouldn't it be interesting if you gave your book away on one of those sites? And what would happen if you did that? You know, I've always been too chicken to do it, but I think about certain genres like lit RPG feels like a really, really good fit for something that you would upload to a torrent site and just release it into the wild and see what happens. That's a first idea. Maybe someone listening can take that. The second idea is crowdfunding in reverse for publishing projects. So you're probably familiar with Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter really needs no description. But I was thinking today about artificial intelligence and how expensive it is to develop. And I was thinking about other types of technologies that indie authors could use and that we, in many respects, need, and how we don't get those things because they're too expensive. And so this may be something I do long term, not tomorrow, but well into the future when I'm far more successful, is what if there was a platform where people could post things that they wanted? Like if you're an author, if I'm an author, I want an AI software that does this. Or if I am an author, I want an editing software or a writing app or processor that does this. Or I want Scrivener or Vellum to do this, right? You post it on there, and then people can see it, and they can vote based on how interested they are in it. And then they can start putting their money toward that idea. And then this can be a platform for business developers, app programmers, and entrepreneurs to take a look at these ideas and say, these are the most funded ideas. These are the ideas that authors are saying that they want and that they're willing to pay for. And that, these ideas have these amounts of dollars pledged to them if someone were to do it. And then that can become a way to fund certain things that we want in our community. So, like, for example, if I say, I want an AI software that will look at my book cover and make recommendations based on all the other covers in my genre on Amazon, just as a silly example. And 1,000 other authors say that they want that, and they decide each of those authors puts $5 down toward it. Right? Well, then there's a dollar value associated with that. And so then a developer can look at that and say, that's interesting idea. If I were to do this, I would get paid this amount of money. Maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. And then maybe those people can offer feedback on why maybe that amount of money isn't worth it, or so on and so forth. It would just be a really interesting idea as a way to drive innovation in the indie author space. Because that's one thing that we have right now, but it's one thing we're going to need more of in the future, particularly in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so how do we start funding that innovation in a space where, for the most part, many of us are self-contained, right? Like as an author, I make money, but I don't make enough money to go out and hire a data scientist to do stuff for me, right? But as a block, maybe we have a little bit more power and can negotiate a little bit more innovation. So that's an idea. If somebody wants to take it, let me know. Otherwise, it'll probably be something I do in about 10, 15 years when I have more money. And the third idea is really, it's more of feedback. It's something I want to know from you guys. I thought about being a little bit more transparent about what I'm doing. You guys know I'm very transparent, but I thought about being a little bit more transparent and offering some more behind the scenes on what I'm doing and what I'm learning. So the idea that I have right now, and this is kind of an evolving thing, and I may not even do it, we'll see. But the idea that I have right now is almost like a quarterly book, and it would be a short book. I mean, maybe 10,000 words, right? That recaps many of the lessons that I've learned on a daily basis. Because you guys know I share ideas of the week all the time. I share lessons learned. I have way more. I just happen to share one or two with you guys every week. So wouldn't it be interesting if I shared that in a book that you could buy? And it's really just more of practice sessions. It's me learning and passing along my information as I learn it. And maybe there's something in that book that you find helpful. Maybe there's not. But in a way, it also becomes a blueprint to all the things I'm going to do in the future. You know, I've thought about that, but if you're interested, let me know. But I'm going to continue to explore that. But that's also an idea for you. I mean, just thinking about how all of us are constant public works in progress. Maybe there are ways that you can be more transparent with your readership. And I found that people find that really interesting. It's one of the reasons people listen to this show every week. So anyway, I know that was a long preamble. I've got a topic this week I want to talk about that I think is important, and that has to do with more thoughts about AI and authors. And just as a reminder, I have a show about this. It's episode 69, How AI Will Replace Us. It is in the show notes, a link. But just the main theme from that episode, and I don't remember when the date was, but it's that if we don't accept artificial intelligence in some form as authors and a publishing community, we will get left behind. Because everyone in almost all industries are finding some sort of a way to implement it. And we are not, mainly because we don't have the means to do it, but also because data scientists may not necessarily see much value in what we do. And that's not a jab at data scientists, but it's just that it can be difficult to find ways for AI to help us in our industry. All right. So if we don't adopt this in some form, we will get left behind. That is a fact. I mean, we can argue it all day long, but you know, if you think about the future in a world where traditional publishers have the ability to use artificial intelligence as a way to help them create content and as a way to help them drive their marketing, and we don't, that is a significant disadvantage. And the biggest advantage that we have right now, and that I think we're going to continue to have in the future, is the fact that as indie authors, we are nimble. We have the ability to see what the market is doing and create content relatively quickly and change our business strategy at the drop of a hat if we need to, as a way to stay sustainable. All right. Now, if you take that, if you give traditional publishers an advantage, now I don't know that they're smart enough to realize that this is the advantage that they could potentially have in 5 to 10 years, maybe 20 years. I don't know that they're thinking like that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. But if I were a traditional publisher, if I was the CEO of one of the big five, that would be the first thing on my mind is what are the advantages we can have in the next 10 to 20 years? And you can invest in AI that helps you predict or be more accurate on the types of books that you can buy that are going to save you expenses and make you more money. And I think it's a no-brainer. All right, so we are nimble, but that sort of advantage that takes away our nimbleness, because the reason that we are nimble is it's all manual. Like there's very little automation in what we do. The only reason we're able to pivot and see what's around the curve is because we're manually consuming podcast content. We're manually consuming content on the internet. We're manually going to conferences and so on and so forth, when there's so much more data out there that we could be gathering and benefiting from, that it becomes a problem. All right. So another thing I was thinking about, and it was because I was listening to some folks. I won't say who, but I was listening to some folks, and they were romanticizing the way that indie authors do business. And as I heard them talking, I was thinking to myself, what they're saying is different, but this sounds a lot like what traditional publishers were doing in 2011. So let me give you some examples. And again, this is not what these people were saying, but these are just some examples of the ways that I think that we romanticize the way we do business. Meaning we are so in love with being indie authors that we sometimes forget that our lifestyle can be taken away from us very quickly. The first is this ebook only mentality, right? If your book is only in ebook format, you're losing. I don't care how much money you're making, you're losing. It makes no sense. There's ebooks, there's paperbacks, there's audio. Just because indie authors are making the majority of their money with ebooks right now, that does not mean that is the way it will be in the future. So in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to come a day where if you're ebook only, you're screwed. All right. Second way we romanticize the way we do business is Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is great for what it is. I have nothing wrong. I have no ill will against Kindle Unlimited. I've only got one of my books in KU right now, and I'm not even really paying that much attention to it. And the reason for that is because I believe that long term, the best way to be sustainable is to have your books in as many different places as possible. So that's one way that we also romanticize the way we do business. People say, well, you just can't make as much money on Kobo and all these other places. Well, that's true, but there's going to come a day where all those people who are in Kindle Unlimited and who are making their livelihoods on that platform, they're going to be screwed. All right. And then also thinking about writing first as a mentality. So, there's so many other types of content out there that we can create. It's not just books, right? And so moving away from thinking about the book first, I think is an important pivot that we're all going to have to make at some point. I don't know what that's going to look like or what it's going to be, but taking a book first mentality may not be the best way to proceed with things in the future. And that applies to me as well, right? Because when I think of things, first thing I think of is writing books, but that may not be the best way forward as we think about the future. So anyway, the reason I say all this, I say this is thinking about romanticizing the way that we do business is because when we start seeing innovations and technology that can change the way that we operate, we have to be careful not to fall into the same trap that traditional publishers fell into, which is, well, the paperback book is king. We've got to protect the hardback, so therefore we need to price the ebook higher. Indie authors, their books are crap. There's no way that you can compare their books to ours, right? Because we have first-rate editors, and you want to have a publisher that's got hundreds of years of experience behind you, and all these other things that traditional publishers said as their bottom lines were slowly eroding and then very quickly eroding as indie authors started to take more market share, right? There is going to come a day, and I know people are not going to like me saying this, but there is going to come a day where we as indie authors are going to be in the same spot as traditional publishers, and we're going to be romanticizing the way we do business, and then next thing you know, we're going to be in the same spot they are, where we're going to be losing money, losing career opportunities, and I don't want that for myself, And I don't want that for other people, because it can be really, really easy to become victims of our success, right? Really, really easy. And so we have to constantly be thinking about how we innovate, how we stay nimble, and how we can use technology to our benefit rather than poo-pooing it. All right. Now that's just a long way of getting into this AI conversation, because again, these are things I've been thinking about, because you can't get, in many respects, you can't get to where I'm talking about until you understand that, like until you internalize it, because the business of artificial intelligence is going to be a very big hurdle for us as indies. The first reason it's going to be a hurdle for us is the expense. As I mentioned before, it's not cheap to hire a data scientist. It's not easy to come up with ideas for AI. It's not easy to amass the gigantic mountains and mountains and mountains of data that you need in order to train an AI to do what you need it to do. So that is our biggest hurdle right now. And I don't know how we get over that unless the technology gets better. But that's not a hurdle that traditional publishers have, right? The second hurdle that I think we're going to have to deal with is return on investment. And return on investment right now is really hard to get because AI is so gray. I happen to work at a Fortune 100 insurance company, and one of the things that we're exploring right now that I'm actively involved in is artificial intelligence and how we leverage that. And the really hard part about it is that the folks at the top, they want a return on their investment. They don't want to spend money on something that's not going to make them money. But the problem with artificial intelligence is that it's an investment. It's not something that you're necessarily going to make money at right away. It's often about what you can learn. And then how do you take what you learn and then get business results from that, right? And it can take you a long time to get to that point. And so for a lot of organizations, return on investment is long term, but we don't have that luxury as indie authors because we're very small businesses, right? So it's really, really hard to imagine an AI solution that we can use right now, but I think we have to start talking about it, right? And so what I wanted to spend the balance of the episode talking about is what I think, and this is just kind of my spitballing this, 4 ways that AI can revolutionize how authors do business. All right, just 4 ideas just based on how we do business today that I think AI could potentially help us with. And again, maybe this technology doesn't exist today, but this is something that I really do see. All right, now number 1 is using artificial intelligence as a replacement for a developmental editor. All right, so you guys know how I feel about developmental editors. I'm not a fan of the service. It's not. I don't dislike developmental editors. I just dislike the fact that what they're providing you doesn't provide any real business impact. I mean, there's no way that you can prove that a developmental edit helped your book sell more copies. In fact, you could get a developmental edit and your book still not sell any copies. Then what? But with a copy edit and a proofread, see, I can tie that to a business result. I can tie that to return on investment. I know that if I publish a book that's been copy edited, I know that is going to make me more money. The reason I know that is because if I publish a book that has not been copy edited, then readers are going to mention it in reviews, and that is going to hurt the sales potential of my book, right? Like, that makes more sense. Like, it's like, okay, light bulb, that makes sense. But with a developmental edit, you have no way of proving or tying any of the edits or things that they're recommending to any kind of business result. That's why I have a problem with developmental editing at its core. Now, if you think about artificial intelligence, and you think about there's a number of products in the market that do this already. So this technology is actually here. There are a number of services out there that you can feed your manuscript through, and then it will analyze your manuscript and give you a report or give you suggestions on what you can do to make your story better. All right. Now, I have not seen any service on the market that does this well. And the reason I think I'll talk about that in a minute, maybe getting a cart ahead of the horse. But what they do is basically attempt to do some of the things that a developmental editor can do. So maybe what it'll do is it'll map your story arc out on a plot, or it'll tell you the different emotional beats of your story, or it might give you some things that you maybe want to think about that maybe the mega bestsellers have done, right? I mean, it's all very subjective, but it's based on comparing your manuscript to another more established, proven to be selling manuscript. Right, so it's a replacement for a developmental editor. Now, personally, in theory, I got no problem with this. When you think about what you're going to pay for a service like this, it's probably going to be pennies on the dollar compared to the thousands of dollars that you pay for a developmental editor. That said, you're probably better served hiring a developmental editor, because I don't think the technology is there right now. If you were to hire a developmental editor, I'm not recommending that anybody do that, but I'm just simply saying the technology is not to the point where it can replace them yet. But I do think that could be a way that we could use artificial intelligence. All right. Now, it's the one path that I probably don't agree with the most, mainly because I think that, again, I don't think that they're needed. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to pay $89 or $99 or even $100 for a service like this versus paying thousands of dollars for a developmental editor, then yeah, sure. The big thing you got to worry about is false positives. And now I'm going to talk about the cart here. I think the poison pill with this part of technology, and it's the one thing I wish people would think about when you look at technology like this, is what is the data comparing your data to? I am not, and I've seen several services that do this. I'm just not convinced that comparing your book to a bestseller is the right way to do it. I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think a better way to do this is to compare your book to other comparable books on the market and then make suggestions based on that. I think that that's a far better route to take than comparing your book to Harry Potter, or some other mega best-selling book out there, because there's just not a whole lot of data that you can get from Harry Potter or any mega best-selling book. I just don't think that data exists. But I think if you compared your book to the number one book in your genre on Amazon, I think you'd get far more interesting ideas in terms of how to improve your story. That's my personal opinion. I've never heard anybody else say that, but I think the problem with this is when you have an editor or a software that is very general, you're going to get general results. And when we're writing, we don't need general results. We have no use for general results. We need results that are going to be specific and dialed in to the genres that we're writing in. And I think the technology is nascent today. I think that it'll eventually get there. I think the biggest problem with these services is that they need more data. And I think that as they get more data, they're going to become more granular. And that's why I do think that these services could honestly become replacements for developmental editors. And I really look forward to seeing what they can do. Now, the second way that I think AI can revolutionize the way that indie authors do business is a true writing assistant that helps you become a better version of yourself. So I think I've said this in the past. I've said it a number of times. I don't care about the rules of the English language. I really don't care. I don't care about the rules of that or the rules of this or that. I have no use for that other than it's helpful if an editor points it out to me because I can improve the clarity of my writing. I don't care about the rules of the English language unless they intersect with what I have written, right? So let me give you an example of this. So this is one of the things that I think Grammarly and programs like that, I wish they could do a better job of it. I know it's hard because English is not an easy language to program into rules. So I get it, right? But I don't care about all the other millions of people that have used Grammarly, because Grammarly, that's what it is. It's machine learning. It takes things that I've done wrong and it compares it to what all the other millions of people around the world are doing in their books, or not even their books, but their emails or their websites or any other thing that they're using. I have no use for that. You know, I just care about how can I become a better version of myself. So instead of looking at the generic rules of English and all the millions of people that are out there, I don't care about that. What I want an app to do is I want an app to look at my first book, and I want it to look at the edits that my editor recommended, and then I want it to look at the edits that I accepted from that editor. And then what I want it to do is I want it to take those edits and as many as possible turn those into rules, so that when I run my second book through the engine, it then can identify repeat mistakes that I have made based on what my editor has recommended in the past. That's what that is, man, wouldn't that be interesting? And I don't even know that might not even be something that AI can help us with. That might be something that we could do today without AI. But oh man, I mean, just think about that. If every edit that your editor ever made, you could run a rules engine through your manuscript and help you prepare a manuscript that's going to be cleaner for your editor. Wow, that's going to save you a lot of editing costs. It's going to make your editor love you, and it's going to ensure that you have a cleaner manuscript. So again, I don't know what this looks like because it doesn't exist today, but I think a true writing assistant that helps you become a better version of yourself is an app that I would invest in. Now, the third way I think that AI can revolutionize how authors do business is through marketing assistants. And I do think that this technology exists today. So, when I think about things like Amazon ads or Facebook ads, I think about something that is highly repetitive. It produces a lot of different data points, and it is something that I would like to make data decisions based on how other people are utilizing their ads. So like with writing, that's the exact opposite, right? So I think that it's possible that you could create some sort of AI software that could make recommendations for what your Amazon ad should be based on how your current ads are performing. I think there would be enough data there to be able to create something that would give you some reliability. And when I think about AMS ads, I bet, and this is just a hunch, but I bet that an AI could do Amazon ads better than I could. It's just a hunch because it's all data driven. Like, it's all data driven. I mean, you have to make decisions based on data, and this is a battle where it's been proven that humans and if you put a human against a machine in terms of interpreting data, the machine is going to win every time. And so, if there was some way to have an AI software make recommendations on Amazon ads or Facebook ads or any other ad platform that's pay-per-click, I think that's a really easy way to use AI. And then when you think about it, a little bit further, it's kind of interesting when you think about when you think about discoverability, right? Because maybe it could be that if you use some sort of software, it could help your book get discovered in ways that you couldn't. And I think that's also interesting. If everyone were using this AI software, might it help solve the discoverability problem? I don't know. It's just an idea I'm throwing out there in the universe, right? Because I know that for a fact, Amazon ads have helped my book get more discovered. And so if I could have an app do that better than I can, oh man, that would be really cool, right? So also with marketing assistants, it would also be interesting to implement brand monitoring or sentiment analysis into some stuff. So like if you're like a bestseller and people are always talking about you, you don't have time to look at every single thing that people are saying about you, right? Like, it's just not possible. So wouldn't it be interesting if there was some sort of software that could gather all of the information that it finds about you on the internet and prepare a report and then make recommendations on what you should respond to and what you shouldn't based on certain criteria. So maybe something identifies that there's some trolls talking about you. Well, you don't want to respond to that, but maybe it identifies somebody who's viewing your book favorably, and so maybe you want to respond to them and thank them, right? Or maybe there's something out there that gives you some sort of score that lets you know how your current book is being responded to in the marketplace, and it does that based on what's going on Google, what's going on Amazon, what's going on different book retailers, and it rolls all that up into a score or into some visual data that gives you some color analysis on how things are going for you. And when your score drops under a certain amount, or when the color changes in certain degrees, maybe it's time to pay attention. That's assuming everything is accurately graded. But anyway, that's just another idea, marketing assistance. And then the fourth thing that I think that AI could potentially help us with is writing to market. So, I did a course on writing to market. And as part of that course, to figure out where my book fit in the urban fantasy market, I had to do a lot of research, and I had to find a lot of different data points on books out there that were comparable to mine. And I think about all of those decisions that I had to make, and I think about an AI potentially helping me with that. So instead of me going out and having to dig and figure out, is this urban fantasy? Is it not urban fantasy? Is there software that could do that? Where you type in or you run your book through it, and then it goes off on Amazon and it tries to find books that are similar to yours based on what the categories are, although that sometimes can be a red herring. What the categories are, what the keywords are, what's in the book description, what the reviewers are saying, what is being said about the book on the internet, what is being said about the book on podcasts. Now that Google has the ability to, index podcasts now, that's going to be a big deal. What's on YouTube, what's on social media. I mean, there's all sorts of data points I think that you could look up about what your book is and where it might fit. And so wouldn't it be interesting if there was a way to get AI assistance in terms of writing to market and being able to tell you or give you some ideas about how your book might fit in the market? Again, I think it's a discoverability tool, right? Because then you can start to see some things that maybe you wouldn't have seen before. So those are just some ideas that I had. Again, I know, I'm not a data scientist. I'm not going to pretend to be one. I know that there are limitations probably with everything I said. But I do think that we've got to start thinking about that, and we've got to start having some conversations about what it is that we want to see, because maybe some of the things that would help us stay nimble as indie authors are actually relatively easy to do as software. We'll never know until we start asking. So that's why I'm putting these things out into the universe, and who knows what might happen. But anyway, I hope that maybe this was helpful. Hopefully it wasn't too rambly. Sometimes I can be when it comes to these episodes. But I hope everybody is staying well and healthy. Hope you're doing great. And be sure to sign up for my advanced review copies for your self-publishing questions answered at authorlevelup.com/QA-advance. And I will holler at you next week. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.